Hello, good morning and welcome to BBC News. British soldiers who fought in Iraq could be prosecuted for war crimes. That's according to the head of a unit investigating alleged abuse. The Iraq Historic Allegations Team says it's considering more than 1,000 cases. British troops are accused of offences including murder, rape and torture. The unit has yet to bring any prosecutions and its investigations are not due to be completed for another 4 years. The Ministry of Defence says it takes such allegations extremely seriously. With me now is our political correspondent Chris Mason. Chris, what's behind this? Because, you know, the Iraq War began more than a decade ago.
Quite, and yet these investigations are continuing and will do for some time. The mandate that this team has extends until the end of 2019, and in this interview in The Independent, its head says or indicates that it might take even longer than that. It's worth just looking at the scale of the work they're doing, not least because this Iraq Historic Allegations Team might be something you're just not aware of. Considering more than 1,000 cases, as you were saying, 145 people working for it, civil servants, civil investigators, Royal Navy police staff. Set up in 2010, as I say, mandate until the end of 2019. It is independent of the military chain of the command. I understand the Ministry of Defence didn't know that this interview was coming. And it's worth looking as well, particularly at the words that Mark Warwick, its head, has used in this interview. He's a former police detective who was hired to look into this. He says there are serious allegations that we're investigating across the whole range of investigations, which incorporates homicide, where I feel there is significant evidence to be obtained to put a strong case before the service prosecuting authority to prosecute and charge. Note that he's not explicitly saying they have the evidence, merely that he thinks that they hope that they can get it. It's also ambiguous as to whether or not he thinks unlawful killing will necessarily, or that kind of charge will necessarily be eventually prosecuted.
But, I mean, has this happened before? We know in Northern Ireland, which was, of course, a domestic emergency, there have been inquiries and so on, and that actually does continue at certain levels. But can we expect something similar in Afghanistan with our troops who were there, or going right back to, I don't know, the Korean War or something?
The case that's made by the government is that they are obliged to look into these kind of allegations because of the European Convention on Human Rights. There are some within the Conservatives who want to see that change, that obligation that the UK currently faces changing. I think what's happening here, and I don't know this specifically because I haven't been able to speak to Mr Warwick yet, but the timing politically is quite interesting. Last weekend, the Defence Secretary Michael Fallon gave an interview to the Sunday Telegraph in which he said he was concerned about what he described as ambulance-chasing British law firms, which were leading, he felt, to British troops who were out in war zones fearing that when they got home they could get hauled before the courts, and that was something he found really uncomfortable. Then a week later, we see this interview from Mr Warwick. As I say, I don't know that this is what's motivated Mr Warwick giving the interview. I just merely set out one interview is followed by the other. Exactly. Here, out comes Mr Warwick in this interview, effectively saying, look, I've got a job to do here. I've been asked to do it. There's an obligation to do it. It takes time because it's complicated, because of the time frame that they're looking into, 2003 to 2009, and also because we're talking about Iraq here. So if they want to try and seek evidence on the ground, for obvious reasons, that's not going to be easy.
Chris, thanks very much. Now, for more perspective on this, we can join